I used to walk in the neighborhood, and I noticed one day when I was walking a butterfly that was metamorphosizing, and it was coming out of the chrysalis, and it drew my attention. So I kept going back to the bush. I started to notice that there were other chrysalises that were not viable. They were brown. I kept going back day after day, and there was no butterflies coming out of them. So I started to do a little bit of research and investigate, and there was pesticides being used in our area.
Pollinators are really important on a global scale. We know they're important for our food production. They're worth billions of dollars in terms of the services that they provide. And then, they also help our ecosystems thrive.
Plants and pollinators are interrelated. Like, you can't have one without the other. If you don't have pollinators, the plants won't make it to the next generation. And if you don't have plants, the pollinators aren't going to make it either. So they're very intertwined.
We're really lucky to have such a wide variety of species of pollinators, especially bees. Bees are essential to our food source. If we didn't have bees, we wouldn't eat. Also, the bats in this area, they are what pollinate all our beautiful cactus, and butterflies. All of the flowers you see, the milkweed, they pollinate all of that. So without that, we wouldn't have such a beautiful landscape in the desert.
Pollination was one of the reasons why I got into beekeeping. There wouldn't be any citrus in Arizona without bees. They need the pollination in order to survive, and we need the food that comes from the pollination that happens. If we have no longer bees on the planet, the human population will only survive about 2 years. We have so many exterminators out there that that's one of the reasons why I'm out here in this yard here. I rescue bees every year. I do probably anywhere between 150 and 200 rescues a year.
There are over 1,400 different bat species across the world. They're so beneficial to us pretty much at every level. They're critical pollinators and seed dispersal. The bats fly in and get a drink of nectar, and they get pollen on their face, and so their head gets covered with pollen, their shoulders, and when they go from plant to plant, they're trading off pollen, and so they're cross-pollinating these plants in a much larger amount and can fly a further distance. You're looking at a much more efficient pollinator.
My whole childhood, I was outside. I had a family garden. I've always been around plants and enjoyed that sort of space. Here at the Desert Botanical Garden, we cultivate a space that is not only beneficial for the plants, but for the pollinators here as well. We're then able to educate the public on the relationship between the pollinators and the plants. We have our hummingbird garden, we have our bee garden, and we have our butterfly garden. We also have our butterfly pavilion, which hosts a spread of different species of butterflies, as well as different nectar and host plants for them. People are captivated by them because they're so iconic. Kind of hooking them in with monarch butterflies and then really expanding that is a good gateway to get people thinking about conservation and then thinking about why native plants are important.
So the pollinators within a certain area are native to that area. So when you plant their specific native plant, it attracts the native species to those. They have healthy food, they have a healthy life, they continue to produce offspring, and then the cycles continue. If you don't have that, you're not going to have the species producing, you're not going to have the continual pollinating of those plants. Within my neighborhood, when people move in, they're not educated about the importance of native plants and how they're essential to the native species. People will plant things that are not native and they'll use pesticides. This actually is harming the environment and it's minimizing the populations of our native species. And so what we did was we built our own habitat. Pretty much about 95% is all native plants. So it's safe, it's protected, there's no pesticides, there's plenty of nectar which attracts all of the pollinators. It makes me feel like I'm doing something positive for nature instead of doing something that's taking away from the natural resources. We always think that nature is something we're supposed to conquer, or nature is something we're supposed to overcome. And I don't think that we ever see it like it's something that we just need to be aligned with.
We know that urban habitat is really important for pollinators and can be really valuable. We have an opportunity to make our cities really pollinator friendly and create that habitat just by adding native plants into our urban spaces.
You have people that plant lots of pretty flowers and lots of citrus. Well, they can't have those produce anything without bees.
I've seen a good poster where there's, animals, and they're going, "You moved into my neighborhood. Now why are you so annoyed that I'm still here?" And that's really, people tend to love the wild lands, but then don't want the wild animals.
It's a relationship that you have to have in order to survive.
Kids pick up a lot. They come into the world with a blank slate, and then we make a difference.
As a special education teacher, I do have the benefit because I teach life skills. So a lot of times if I have mantises in my yard, I'll bring them in. If I have a caterpillar or two, I'll bring them in. Paying attention to the things that are meaningful and that keep us as a viable species on this planet is something that's important to teach to the next generation so that they have the respect and that they can go forward and be good servants of the earth.
Just remember that we're all on this planet together.
You don't need to save the world to make an impact. Like, you can just be present, and you can be helpful, and you can be willing to learn.
I do think that there is hope, and I think that it starts with one person at a time.
I've seen the bees actually come back a little bit. The public is starting to learn that they need them.